Happy holidays. Welcome to this special edition of Business Morning. Well, it is a public holiday, but because it's a weekday, yours truly, Business Morning, will ensure that 55 minutes counts, and it counts successfully. That's what we hope to do at the end of 55 minutes. Well, for all our Christian viewers, we say Happy Easter, but everyone certainly is enjoying part of it. So let's dive into it today. And we start with global oil prices. Well, it's trading. Oil is trading today, unlike what we had on Friday. And we see that oil prices were roughly unchanged on Monday as investors weighed on the prospects of tighter supplies from OPEC Plus producers from May against concerns about weakening global growth that may dampen fuel demand. Brent crude futures slipped 5 cents to $85.07 a barrel, while U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude was at $80.72, and that's up 2 cents. Both contracts rose for a third straight week last week, returning to levels last seen in November after the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries and their allies, OPEC Plus, said they were going to do that surprise cut, which starts in May. And following the announcement, the world's top oil exporter raised its May crude prices to term customers in Asia and the United States. State oil giant Saudi Aramco has also notified several Asian customers that they will receive full contract volumes in May despite the production cut. Separately, investors are watching the progress of talks between Iraq and Kurdistan to restart northern oil exports, which could bring more crude to the global market. Well, we are still talking about oil now, but this time it's edible oil. Malaysian palm oil futures dropped for a fourth session on Monday due to absence of fresh destination buying, which hurt market sentiment despite a tighter supply situation at origins. The benchmark palm oil contract for June delivery on the Bursa Malaysia Derivatives Exchange dropped 0.11% to 3,790 ringgit. That's about $860 per ton, extending a 4.26% loss over the past 3 sessions. Data released during midday break shows that Malaysia's palm oil inventories at the end of March fell 21.08% from the previous month to 1.67 million tons. The daily's most active soy oil contract dropped 1.21%, while its palm oil for May delivery was 0.65% lower. The Chicago Board of Trade rose 0.39%. Palm oil is affected by price movement in related oils as it competes for a share in the global vegetable oil market. Palm oil may test a support of 3,740 ringgit per ton, a break below which could open the way towards a range of 3,683 to 3,718 ringgit. Still in the global space, Chicago wheat futures climbed more than 1% on Monday, rising for the first time in 4 sessions as Russia's threat to bypass an unbroken grain deal underpinned prices. Corn prices eased, weighed down by improved weather outlook for U.S. spring plantings, and rising Black Sea tensions could underpin U.S. wheat futures. Meanwhile, the Ukraine export deal is set to expire in May, and Turkey is looking to extend it. Russia would like to broker a deal that includes fertilizer exports. Well, let's come back home now. Tinkan and Apapa ports in Lagos, as well as other parts, need urgent attention. That's according to the Managing Director of Nigerian Ports Authority, Mr. Muhammad Bello Koko. Mr. Bello Koko believes that if the ports in the country are not given urgent attention beyond the palliative which have been applied before now, it would cause trouble for exports.
The port of Tinkan is collapsing. There is no imminent collapse, but in the next few years, if something is not done, there will be problems. We have been managing it and doing palliative and other, jobs, but it is time we completely rehabilitate Tinkan Port. We also need to rehabilitate some parts of Apapa. We need to reconstruct the breakwaters in Escravos. It has collapsed for over 10 years. We've just been able to conclude the bathymetric and other surveys where that will enable us to reconstruct the breakwaters. There is also a collapsed jetty in Calabar. There are some collapsed jetties in Warri also, and Rivers Port, and even in One. So you find that there is no port that has that does not need reconstruction of some of its facilities. Our estimates currently are between $560 million to $800 million. Now that gap is because if we decide to leave Apapa till much later, we don't need up to $800 million. But if we need to also reconstruct Tinkan as we're reconstructing other places, we need about $800 million. We have increased our revenue from little, well, let me not call it little because billions are, yeah. So from 250 or 300 billion to now 361 billion. Our contribution to CRF has increased to 91 billion. And we believe that this year will do far better than that.
So the talk about boosting non-oil exports, of course, begins with rehabilitating the ports. This, of course, is not a new message, but we'll keep talking about it. That was the Managing Director of Nigeria Ports Authority, Mr. Mohammed Bello Koko. In other matters now, the federal government has secured $800 million from the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, the World Bank, as part of its post-subsidy palliative plans. The Minister of Finance, Mrs. Zainab Ahmed, disclosed that $800 million from the World Bank formed the first tranche of palliatives and will be disbursed to 10 million households considered to be most vulnerable. Well, to help us understand some of the implications of this, we have Dr. Muda Yusuf, the Chief Executive Officer of Center for the Promotion of Private Enterprises. He joins us in the studio. Good morning, Dr. Yusuf, and happy holiday.
Yeah, thank you. Happy
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
So the first thing that came to my mind when I saw this $800 million was, has this been factored into that projection of 77 trillion naira debts that we're going to have by June?
I don't think so.
So that means 77 trillion naira is going to be more, and they say this is the first tranche.
Yes, yes. And it's actually very disturbing because the debt situation already is worrisome. And if you have a situation where you still have to borrow for purposes of palliatives, although there's a bit of confusion, some people are saying perhaps it was a grant, not a loan, but I think it's a loan.
Because, I mean, does World Bank go about giving countries money as much as $800 million?
I doubt that. I doubt it.
Then we have to check the source of World Bank.
Exactly. I doubt it. So if it's a loan, I think it's something that we need to interrogate because we have seen palliatives before now. We saw issues of palliatives when we had the Petroleum Trust Fund. There were palliatives when we had the Shopee. And the whole concept of palliatives at that time was that whatever savings you get from the removal of the subsidy, you use it to cushion, whatever the outcomes are. That is the whole principle. Because when we talk about this subsidy, the whole idea is to make savings. And if we're able to remove it as fast as we wish we could, we are talking of savings of between 6 to 7 trillion, So ideally, whatever palliatives that we need to do, you do it from the savings that you get from the removal of the subsidy. That is what should be. It's not something, in my view, that the country should now go again are borrowing. That is one. Secondly, whatever we need to do around these palliatives, I think it is better left for the incoming administration. We have just about 1 month for this administration, slightly over a month for this administration to go. The whole issue of managing the subsidy removal, all the engagements, all the issues that will arise is the responsibility of the incoming administration. So the issue of, okay, it is good even if they have secured that money, but whatever has to be done with regard to disbursement, the minister was talking about this social investment framework, the register and all of that. I think it is better left for the incoming administration.
Because that's also another area of questions that is going to be shared among those that are considered the most vulnerable. Yeah. We had the 5,000 naira. Was it the 5 or the 10,000 naira?
5,000.
That was controlled by the office of the vice president. Yeah. I mean, it raised some dust that I don't think are totally settled at this time. So the definition of the most vulnerable, how you get them registered Where are they? What parts of the country? That also raised, so when we talk about sharing this $800 million to the most vulnerable, there's so many questions, that it seems Nigerians are not really settled with that. We might just be getting this and increasing our debt, as we're not sure of the status of the $800 million yet, without really feeling the impact.
Yes, it is important to do a proper audit of the whole social investment program framework, to be sure that even if we are deploying it to ease the burden of the poor, we have to be sure that we are doing it properly. And I agree with you, there has been issues as to the integrity of the register itself. This register of the 10 million people and all of that, households, the integrity of the register, how it was compiled, how equitable is the distribution. These are very fundamental issues that we need to address. If we must even use the social investment framework. And beyond that, there's a policy dimension to palliatives. Palliatives is not just about distributing money. It's also about creating the environment for some critical, players in the economy. Using our fiscal policy, just like import duty, for instance, we want to encourage more private investors to go into refineries. We want to encourage more private investors to go into pipeline construction, all this critical investment that should take place in the downstream oil sector. We need to put incentives on the table, fiscal incentives, things like import duty, things like taxation. All of these things are critical, even for transportation. For those who are investing...
Transportation, I remember when the administration of former President Jonathan tried putting in buses to ease transportation, but it doesn't seem like it went well.
Well, it went fairly well, and I must say even at a symbolic level, because I knew that the Nigerian Labour Congress also had allocation of buses, which they also put on the road and all of that. So it has some impact, but the thing is that the issues of making things easier for people is a very big issue, because it's a very big country. So that is why the more fundamental issues about policy to cushion the effect is also very important, even more important than all this distribution of money. I mean, we need to bring down the cost of food, for instance. What kind of incentives are we going to put in place in terms of the inputs that those who are investors in agriculture, how can we bring down their costs? Cost of fertilizer, cost of equipment, cost of the mechanization, cost of food processing, and the cost of the intermediate products that some of these food processing companies also use. Because if you are able to bring down their costs, the cost of food will come down. That is very significant. The same thing with those who are in food, transportation. What is current import duty for buses? What can we do to bring it down? We can also look at taxation. The critical components of the economy that can, make life a lot easier for the citizens. We can ease their burden by reducing their tax, in the hope that this will eventually be transmitted to the ordinary citizens. Then there's also the monetary policy perspective. What can you do about credit? If you have to extend your intervention for us to cover some critical sectors that can help to alleviate the sovereignty of Nigeria, let us do that so that we can work from policy to investors, then to the citizens.
Perhaps the government is looking for shorter ways to reach the people. Most of this you're saying has to go through a chain. For instance, if they gave subsidy for importation, for taxes, it might take a while to reach the
No, it doesn't take time. And in any case, these things are not mutually exclusive. You can do whatever you want to do in terms of cash transfer, but just as you said, it has very limited impact. I mean, we got a report that 133 million Nigerians are in poverty. How many people do you want to give handouts to? And how credible is your database to do that? But you can complement this with policy interventions. I mean, we know what the basic things that people consume are. People consume bread, they consume all these noodles, they consume, these staple foods.
And
what can we put in place to reduce the price of staple?
And on the other hand, it is very necessary that this subsidy is dealt with. Even though, you know, NLC is not very happy, they have their conditions. We had Professor Isesage on our program yesterday or so on. You know, he also has this, what he thinks should be done before subsidy is removed. Because, I mean, when we look at how much is being spent on subsidy, it becomes a necessity because we don't know if Nigeria can actually continue with that burden. If we're looking at more than 77 trillion naira by June, and then we continue with subsidy, I mean, we don't get to Ghana stage.
It's not sustainable at all. I listened to Professor Isesage. With due respect, the prof is a lawyer. But what we are discussing is about sustainability of the economy. Because the economy is bleeding. The economy is very fragile. This economy cannot carry the weight and the burden of this subsidy. Because the consequences are a lot. This is what part of the thing that have brought us to where we are. In terms of the huge debt, in terms of having to fall back on the central bank, to be financing government to the tune of over 20 trillion. And all of these things have very serious macroeconomic implications. They have implications for exchange rate depreciation. They have implications for inflation. They have implications for debt service burden. So the implications are a lot. And beyond that, we cannot have such a huge sector and we are blocking private investors in that sector. Private investors cannot go into our petroleum downstream with this subsidy regime. And this is not a business that the government can do
sustainably.
I mean, evidence is there. The refineries have been down for how many years now?
The PIA is a law.
It's a law, but the way it is, I think political expediency and some of these considerations seems to be, you know, superseding even the legal instruments that exist. Because right now we are even practically violating the law.
I thought they adjusted it to accommodate subsidy up until
June.
Yeah,
but you can't expect a government to come today and announce that you are removing the entire subsidy. There has to be a framework. There has to be engagement. So we need to get the private sector into that space. And the only way to do that is to remove this subsidy so that we can have more investment. And we're able to do that. We'll be looking at investment of between 5 to 10 billion US dollars. Because you have investors in refineries, you'll have investors in, transportation, processing, gas, fertilizer, and so many things.
So that means we
should even be in a position to be exporting petroleum products to our neighboring countries legally.
Not through the bank.
No, not through all this money.
So that means the incoming administration ought to be very busy, even as we speak.
They have to, in fact, the engagement ought to have started now. Because the Labour keep insisting that unless the refineries work, the Nigerian government, the bureaucracy, or the political actor are not structured to be able to run a refinery. We'll just be wasting money. So Labour should be focusing more on how we can ensure a proper transition. They should be engaging more on these palliatives. We should be engaging more on how we can ensure competition. Because I've heard some labor unions, labor leaders saying that after all, you said they should deregulate. Look at what is happening to diesel. Look at what is happening to kerosene and aviation fuel. But the big issue is that there is no competition. Without a proper competition framework, subsidy removal can also not achieve the objective. So one of the basic things that we need to do is to ensure that we have a sustainable, very robust competition framework, so that we don't have monopolies in that space.
Yeah, when you mentioned monopoly, I remember Dangote Refinery. A lot of people are very expectant that with the resumption of, refining by Dangote Refinery, everything is just going to be fine.
No, certainly not. Certainly, I mean, that is, we need to also manage expectations. Dangote Refinery is a private investment. It depends on how much you sell crude to Dangote refineries. Then he has to put some margin. He has investors. He has also raised funds domestically and externally. all of these debts have to be liquidated. So we need to manage the expectation. But what is more important is to encourage more investors to come into that space and ensure that there is competition.
But you know, the fear of some oil marketers have placed petrol price at 750 naira for a litre once the subsidies, the fear of that alone.
No, you see, that is also sending a very wrong signal. There are things you can put in place so that you don't have this kind of problems. Now, right now, it's only NNPC that is importing petroleum products. Imagine a situation where you have 10, 15 more players that have access to foreign exchange and can also import. The price will not be as high as that. If you have more players that are importing aviation fuel, diesel, the price will not be as high as that. That's why I'm emphasizing the need for a competition framework and a level playing field. Once we have that, and we can also deploy a lot of monetary fiscal policies to support them so that their price can come down. I mean, I was talking to some of the players in the sector. They even told me that there are fees they are paying to NIMASA and NPA, and they are paying in dollars. These are people, when they lift fuel through their small vessels from NNPC, bigger vessel and all, they have to pay NIMASA, they pay NPA in dollars. They are business people, for goodness sake. Would that not also affect their cost? So we need to look at all the cost variables of all these players so that we put them in a position where their costs can come down and they can also offer something better. And progressively, as we stabilize with that, we have more players even producing domestically. There are investors that are waiting to come into this space.
And you know that removal of subsidy will also free up some funds that could help
enormously, and it will benefit the three tiers of government. To benefit the federal
Nigerians.
And Nigerians, of course. I mean, if the local government is getting more funds, if the state governments are getting more funds, of course it will impact invariably on Nigerians.
Hopefully.
Hopefully, yes.
Dr. Muda Yusuf, Chief Executive Officer of Center for the Promotion of Private Enterprise. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And happy holidays again. Enjoy the rest of the holiday.
Thank you.
All right, well, a lot of work waiting for the incoming administration. Of course, it seems like one of the biggest is this issue of removal of subsidy. Because it's a make or break situation for Nigeria. Can Nigeria continue to bear that burden? Doesn't look like that. And when that, or if that subsidy is removed, what about the consequences? But anyway, we'll see what the incoming administration will do. Here on Business Morning, we'll keep talking about it and bring out suggestions on what should be done. Let's take a break now. When we come back, another important conversation is coming your way here on Business Morning on Channels Television. Welcome back to watching Business Morning here on Channels Television. The Nigerian Economic Summit Group, NESG, has warned that any procrastination in reforming the economy is, and effectively for that matter, and efficient reforms is going to have some consequences and might bring the economy into depression. Now, the reforms they mean is to address macroeconomic and sector-specific challenges in the country. Despite this effort, the growth rate by Nigeria hasn't really impacted the life of individuals. We had Dr. Yusuf there talk about the number of Nigerians that have fallen into the poverty circle even more. Of course, we have inflation, we have rates still going up. We still have the issue of subsidy to stay or not to stay, and we still have that JAPA. That's JAPA syndrome that is still plaguing on Nigeria. I've seen the UK react to that, but we'll talk about that later. What we want to talk about is how this microeconomic indices is affecting specifically now the education sector. And we have joining us the director of Eduland Schools, Mr. Akintunde Ayondosu, joins us in the studio. Mr. Ayondosu, thank you so much for your time. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for inviting us.
Yeah, so let's just, you run schools,
Yep.
a group of schools
Yep.
in Lagos State. Tell us your reality. I don't know if we're out of the cash crunch yet. I don't know your experience with that. I think we're getting out of the fuel scarcity and the fuel queues.
Okay.
Of course, we still have inflation with us.
Very much.
So how does that play out in your sector running schools?
Well, we're coming out of the cash crunch now. The fuel scarcity, which would definitely affect operations very, very much. Not so much from the income aspect, but from the expense aspect, where people are refusing to offer their goods, their services, because you cannot make payments. Very much what obtains across all sectors of the economy. But in terms of the jackpot syndrome and the inflation, whereas affected as almost every other sector of the economy, the primary issue is the affordability of the people you are serving with the inflation. Your costs are rising, their affordability is dropping, and you need to merge the two to make sure that your financial model breaks even at the end of the day. And there's a limit to how much you can raise the cost of your services, because the people you are serving are affected as much as you are. So in that kind of situation, it really puts a lot of pressure on the business model. It puts a lot of pressure on that. Next to that is the jackpot syndrome. Luckily for us, we've not lost staff per se, but I know that the foundations are being laid, and I've, to be honest, told my people they are free to. The other aspect is the parents you are serving. We are catering for a sector, and we have lost quite a number.
So you've had parents who have left the country with
sure.
their children.
With their children.
Because you are serving the younger children, secondary school, primary school.
Secondary school. So we've had parents leave, and automatically the children live with them. So, but ultimately there will be another set of parents replacing, but it's not a sustainable model.
So we've seen reports say that more Nigerians are falling into the poverty circle. That means that social status is changing. People are not able to afford what they could afford before. Have you experienced that maybe some of your parents are not able to, at least as conveniently, or they've had to change schools because of fees?
This is a general trend. This is something that nobody is insulated from. It's a macroeconomic issue that affects everybody. We have had that situation, but luckily for us, we cater for a bracket where I would say substantially they've been able to meet up with their bills. What we have done is to introduce like a structured payment terms for them, and quite a number at the end of this last term were able to meet up with their bills. But that is primarily because of the cadre we are catering for. I know it's not the same across board. So schools are definitely going to be affected, because we're back to the issue of affordability again. Affordability and then the rising costs. So it's only what parents can afford that they will go for. So we're going to experience a situation where students are going to withdraw their, parents are going to withdraw their awards from high fee paying schools to what they can afford. It's inevitable. We can't run from it.
So the restructuring is very interesting. That means SMEs have to get creative for them to stay in business, because you have to think of that structured payment to give parents a bit of ease for them to be able to meet up.
Restructuring would only take care of something of an ameliorative, what is it called? But the core issue is affordability has dropped. Income has dropped. And we're going to find ourselves in situations where you need to look at your services. In some areas, you will need to cut back. For schools that don't keep very much to standards, it's very easy. But we're operating in a bracket where cutting down on standards is really a challenge to keep up with your values, your ethics and their mission. It's really, really a challenging moment at the moment.
So what's the way out for you now? Obviously, it's not just the education sector that is,
no, it's not.
That is affected.
Definitely
What's the way out? We're talking about subsidy and palliative. I'm sure you won't be asking for palliative, but what could make the situation better for you?
The truth about it is it's a macroeconomic thing. And we've always seen these cycles. We've seen the austerity measures. We've seen the SAP, which they've called sharper now, etc., like that. So I believe it's a cycle that all of us have to go through. And the only way out is for there to be macroeconomic growth again. That I don't see any other way out, or except we have growth in the economy, except we have the economy booming again. That's the only way out. All the other ameliorate, we should not forget the fact that most of these private schools are business concerns. They are not NGOs. So the idea of looking for palliatives from government, etc., would not actually tackle the issue on a long-term basis. So I believe that once the economy kicks back into a growth process, we will all come out of it. But it's something that it's cutting across board.
But public schools are no longer competition for private schools.
No, public schools are definitely no longer in competition, at least in a large number of the states. We have a few states that are really raising the standards. And I think this is one area where the government really needs to wake up. Luckily for us in Lagos, in the last 4 years of Governor Sanwo-Olu, we've had a very important professional heading the Ministry of Education, and that has impacted substantially. I'm talking about Mrs. Adefisayo, and that has impacted substantially in the deliverables and delivery from that ministry. We've had the Office of Quality Control really raising the standards to a level where private schools are being better monitored and policed. But where the real impact is going to come out is when the public schools themselves are able to raise their standards to a level where they are able to compete substantially with even overtake the private schools.
Exactly, because I was going to say, I mean, they have a good, even here in Lagos, they have a good regulatory framework, but I mean, running theirs, because when you talk about affordability, it's supposed to, the public school is supposed to be there for the people of, you know, the lower status, lower economic status. That is supposed to be like a relief for them. And then the private school is supposed to be, you know, maybe choice or class,
in an ideal environment. Take England, for example. The bulk of the population attend public schools.
Exactly.
So while we were growing up, we were maybe privileged to attend private schools, but most of our parents attended public schools. So government has the responsibility to educate the masses, and we should not forget the impact an educated population has on the economy. They are the drivers of the growth. So government still has that responsibility. Substantially today, it is still being checked to the private. It's still being checked to the private. And until government takes over that responsibility again, a lot of things would not fall in the right place.
All right, so that we don't forget that it's not just supposed to be a private-driven sector. The education sector is supposed to be largely a public-driven sector. Exactly. Thank you so much, Mr. Akintide Ayodosu, Director, Eduland Schools.
Thank you very much.
And we do hope that the economy, the macroeconomy indices will change, and then it will trickle down to the education sector. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
All right, so it's market time now. Markets are closed again. Okay, because of course Friday was a public holiday, so is today, so the markets are not open. But we do have Caleb Alimi now to give us an overview of the fixed income market, the money market over this holiday and expectations as trading begins again tomorrow. Good morning, Caleb. Happy holiday to you.
Good morning, Ini. Happy holidays as well.
Yeah, so I'm sure you are home now. So thank you so much for making some time out of your holiday to join us. But it's been a quiet fixed income market for some time now. And of course, now it's not even trading. But any hope of this market awakening anytime soon?
I think the big story or the big factor that has driven the market has been the liquidity story. Progressively since the end of last month, we've seen the market liquidity sort of like worsen, and as at Thursday when we closed the market opened at a negative 160 billion, which means most of the banks were funding from the CBN window to the tune of this. Now, so long as it continues to happen, we will continue to have a dull market, so to say, and the bearish sentiments in that market will continue up until there's an injection of fresh money or new money into the system. The biggest source of liquidity over time has been the federal allocations, the FAC inflows, and that came in towards the end of last month, but it came into sort of like a hole and didn't make a significant difference. Before the market would, spur back to life, we need a, sort of fresh inflow that will take the market out of this negative position and then begin to spur some sort of demand and some sort of activity. Interestingly, as we resume on tomorrow, there's going to be a treasury bill auction, a primary market auction on Wednesday, where the demo will be offering about 149 billion worth of treasury bills, which is maturing. They're simply rolling over everything that matures across the 91-day, 180-day, and 365-day maturity. At the last auction, we did see, interest rates reflect the liquidity situation, where they rose by an average of about 700 basis points. We saw the one-year paper rise to a year high of 14.79%, from around 10%. We think that sort of momentum will be sustained on Wednesday because the market, as I said, is still very tight, and we think that is going to continue. The bond auction, there's a bond maturity much later in the month of around 700 billion, plus its coupons, say about 800 billion, which will bring about some sort of fresh inflow into the market as well. Up until those events sort of happen, we don't expect any significant improvement in the liquidity situation. We think the bearish sentiments will continue, and market will just continue to be moderately or most of the time quiet.
The budget for 2023, and that the majority of that funding of the budget was going to come from the domestic market. A lot of people have thought, the market is going to be very much active all through the year.
Well, at the primary auctions, the market has been active. The question is, has it been equally active at the secondary auctions? Maybe not exactly. We'll see that if we check through the primary auctions for treasury bills and bonds. The DMO has consistently, sold more than it put on offer, across all of those, across Q1. And so, yes, they are funding the budgets locally, but there's not a lot happening in the secondary market. A lot of the action is happening at the primary auctions.
Anyway, so Caleb, thank you so much for giving us that analysis. And I know we could delve into the issue of yields and all of that, but let's let you enjoy the rest of your holiday. Thank you for your time, Caleb Alimi.
Thank you for having me, Ini. Enjoy the rest of your day.
You too. All right, so we head to London. It's a bank holiday, but Juliana joins us from home. Always great to have her. Hi, Juliana. Good morning and happy holiday. Glad to see you on this Lord's Day, as we put it.
I'll unmute to say happy Easter. It's very nice to see you, Ini. Nice to see you working hard, even on a holiday.
Well, we love our job, Juliana, just as you do. That's why you're joining us from home. But, it doesn't look very good for, I don't know if this looks good or not, but UK has put Nigeria back on the red list for health workers recruitment. We do know that the Nigerian government has been looking for ways to discourage health workers from leaving the country. I know you've heard of JAPA now. That's one of the current terms here. But what does this mean, and what are some of the implications of this?
Yeah, this is a really, really interesting, polarizing debate that's currently taking place, obviously in Nigeria, but also in the UK too, because you know as well as I do, Inni, that migration and a shortage of workers is a huge issue for the Conservative government. I do just want to point out, unless I have missed something, the list that was updated by the World Health Organization on Saturday, I believe, does place Nigeria as a country that must retain its doctors. But Nigeria has always been there. So this is not a new story. I believe every 3 years, the World Health Organization basically puts together a list of countries that are having issues retaining their health staff, and they use that as some sort of blueprint, or should we say a framework, that it gives to countries with a blooming health force, just to say that, look, it's probably best that you don't recruit health practitioners from that region because they're so understaffed. And so this is not new. I know that a lot of the media have run with this, but Nigeria's always been on this list. But as you say, I know there is an active legislation process going forward now to try and prevent the mass migration, particularly of junior doctors or health practitioners in the country. And like I said, it's quite a polarizing subject because all you have to do, if you take away the kind of emotional part of where you stand in this debate and you look at the statistics, Nigeria's not doing great. I think the World Health Organization recommends that you should have 23 health practitioners. So this is midwives, doctors, nurses, not just doctors or not just nurses, a whole range, 23 of them per 10,000 in a population. Nigeria currently has, I believe, one doctor for every 30,000 individuals. And that's in some parts of the country that are doing well. If you go to the more rural parts of Nigeria, they've got 1 in 40,000. People need to be treated, right? People do need to be treated. But then, of course, the doctors need to be treated right. Right meaning they're paid well, they have the infrastructure they need, they have the support, and they are paid on time. So those are the issues at bay. But yes, I know, like I said, the media in Nigeria have ran with this like it's a new story. It isn't a new story. Nigeria have always been on this red list. And I think the issue is now, especially with some charities and campaigners in the UK, they're now kind of shaking the government, particularly the health minister, Steve Barclay, and saying, can you basically look at this red list and stop the active recruitment? Just very briefly, you said, what are the implications? The implications are very much what they were in the previous 3 years, is that this huge framework of this red list is used as a tool to try and ask government affiliated agencies, serious recruitment firms to not hire doctors or nurses from this list. We know that, the UK have not been listening to that, which is why we are seeing a brain drain. So if you are a health practitioner and you are looking to leave and work elsewhere, particularly in Britain, you are able to do so. It's just that you would not have the sufficient support from the government. But the flip side of that, Inni, is that you need the support from the government because, listen, Britain is not a land of milk and honey. And I know that, can sound pretty patronizing, but it's the absolute truth. There are so many horror stories of people that are living here. They've come here thinking that they're being recruited by a great agency. They're depressed, suicidal, working extremely long hours, not getting the pay that they need, facing and suffering passive racism and aggression. And so, there is another side to the Japa syndrome. But just to be clear, this red list that Nigeria has found itself on, that was updated on Saturday, Nigeria has always been on that list. So there are no changes. But of course, this is a big talking point, and I think it's something we're likely to revisit again and again.
Yeah, I think so too. And, when you were counting some of those not so pleasant experiences, there's a cost of living crisis. I was going through some papers in the UK there, and there are like 5 or more articles just on cost of living crisis in the UK. And I'm wondering, how do you celebrate Easter in the midst of this issue of cost of living?
Gosh, it's pretty tough, and it's very, very expensive. In fact, if you go into a store now, I'm sure you'll see millions of Easter eggs still on the aisles because people haven't had a lot of money to pay for it. Look, it's still not easy to live in the UK. Inflation is still riding high. Of course, Parliament has been in recess over the last couple of weeks. It's really difficult to get any kind of government standing or position on current data. But in terms of news that's coming out of the UK this week, of course, the big one is going to be Joe Biden. Joe Biden, the president of America, will be meeting with Rishi Sunak in Northern Ireland tomorrow. He will be here. I believe Bill Clinton, the former US president, is also coming, as well as Tony Blair, who does live in the UK, but it is for a special event. They are going to be commemorating 25 years of the Good Friday Agreement. It was a huge milestone then signed by the former British Prime Minister Tony Blair with the support of Bill Clinton. We know that Brexit remains a significant sticking point, particularly on the island of Ireland, where there is tensions between the unionists, those who want to remain in the United Kingdom, and the independents, those who believe that people in Northern Ireland should be a part of the Republic of Ireland. That was laid to rest in 1998, but some tensions have fled because they don't have a power-sharing government at the moment. So it's going to be interesting to hear what Joe Biden has to say. I think that's going to keep us busy this week, and I expect more headlines out of Britain about Brexit and the fractures that are within that. And the cost of living crisis continues underneath that headline, and we are anticipating more strikes from public sector workers, as well as the teachers who we know are striking, if not next week, the week after.
Yeah, well, it doesn't look like a pleasant lineup, but our business is to stay on top of the news, and we have you there. Thank you so much, Juliana, and enjoy your holiday until we talk to you at 1:30, that is.
Yes, I'll talk to you then. Thanks, Ine.
All right. Okay, so let's move over to the crypto space now. I wonder if crypto has gone on Easter holiday, but I know Laddie would not.
Happy Easter.
Happy. Did you hear what Juliana said?
Yeah.
That the Easter eggs are just there.
Yeah,
Laddie, and
exactly.
I know you talked about eggs on Friday.
Yeah, we have an egg glut in Nigeria.
In Nigeria.
Apparently.
It seems it's also happening there because of the cost of living crisis.
And it's incredible that this is happening when they should actually be making sales, for eggs. It just shows the seriousness of this rising prices right now.
It's a global thing. We talk of the UK, we talk of Nigeria, and we see the thin line running through.
Exactly, and the central bankers have been battling inflation since 2022, but the war, I don't know if we're winning that war yet. Hopefully.
Hopefully we will.
Hopefully 2023.
And crypto seems to be winning.
Yeah,
it's still green.
Crypto seems to be doing pretty well. And apparently, talking about Easter, let's look at the historical Bitcoin prices on Easter Day. And apparently, traders believe that Easter has some kind of bullish sentiment towards the market. Once it comes from a bear market into Easter, there's this kind of bullish sentiment that comes with that. If you look at 2014 there, all the way down, $497. That's what Bitcoin was trading at Easter. Flip over to 2020 or 2017. We see there's been this ascending price movement there with Bitcoin. To 2018, $6,875. Then to 2019, did have a pullback on Easter of 2019, $5,307. In 2020, we saw $6,878 for Bitcoin. Then fast forward to 2021, we see a big move there, $57,060 there. That was on Easter of 2021. 2022, we're seeing $40,450. And for 2023, $27,963. That was the price for the Bitcoin on Easter. So if there's a bullish move from this level, that's what most traders are expecting. But who knows if history is going to repeat itself this time. Let's bring in Solomon Amunde now, financial market analyst. Hello, Solomon. Great to have you.
Yeah, good morning, Laddie. Good morning.
Good morning. So looking at that historical price movement there for Bitcoin on Easter Day, and obviously we see a lot of traders now talking about there is some kind of bullish sentiment that comes immediately after Easter for the market. Do you think that's going to happen this time?
Actually, I doubt that would happen. At most, we might see Bitcoin benefit a bit because of the already existing white swan events, we might say Bitcoin cling to like $30,000, but that wouldn't be sustainable. And also, if you look at the historical data, last year, just after April, in the month of May, we saw Bitcoin have that massive crash, and we also saw the market dominance dump massively below 48%. And also the bullish year 2021, we also saw something similar. Bitcoin crashed massively from 54,000 to as low as almost 30,000 in the month of May. So I'm expecting a similar thing to happen this year. Between now and next month, we should see some real good price correction in the market.
Yeah, so I guess other traders see some kind of bullish sentiment coming, but you're seeing different, Solomon. But let's look at Bitcoin dominance now. We've seen that's been steady above that 42% level for a month now. It looks like we cannot see alt season with Bitcoin dominance still high. Hello, Solomon.
I lost you briefly.
Yeah, I was talking about Bitcoin dominance. We're seeing it, staying steady above that 42% level for about a month now. What does that mean for the crypto altcoins? Because we know once Bitcoin dominance stays up, altcoins, no altcoin season, should be expected, right?
Okay, so basically, for as long as Bitcoin dominance stays above 44%, it will be quite difficult for altcoins to start moving. And if you notice, since Bitcoin dominance went above 41%, which was around the month of January this year, altcoins started shrinking. They had their most move in the month of February, and afterwards they've been struggling. And Bitcoin has just been eating into the market dominance and the market percentage. So I expect Bitcoin dominance to peak at maximum of 48%, and afterwards we can start seeing some relief rally from the altcoins. But if we are going to see that, it has to happen in the month of April, because once we move past April, I'm expecting a huge red in the market come next month.
All right, thank you so much, Solomon Monday, and compliments of season.
Compliments, laddie, compliments.
Thank you. So we see the cryptocurrencies there. We see Bitcoin this morning traded at $28,239. We see big, massive support at $25,000. So as long as Bitcoin doesn't break above that 30K level into 35,000, analysts are expecting a retest of the 25K level. And we see Ethereum holding on there, $1,857. That's up 0.14%. So this morning we're seeing some greens in the market for Easter Monday. Hopefully we'll see if that continues this week. So as we've seen there from the historical price movement on Easter Day, we see there's some kind of bullish sentiment that comes.
Wouldn't it have been a great Easter miracle if we just woke up on Easter Monday and then we saw Bitcoin back to $60,000?
Wow, that would be an incredible miracle.
I guess that's just in my dreams.
Yeah, dreams. Yeah, for now.
For
now. Who knows?
All right, Adi, thank you so much. See you at 1:30, Business Incorporated. So that's it on the program today. You still have a couple of hours left for today to enjoy the holiday, so please make the most of it. But I'll see you tomorrow on Business Morning. Remember to join Laddie Williams at 1:30, updates on the world of business. And then now, enjoy and rest. I'm John McClure. Bye-bye.